The silence was only for a moment. Fighting resumes in Marawi City, ground zero of the conflict between government forces and ISIS-inspired Maute terrorists after an 8-hour humanitarian pause. During the lull, Maranaos were able to peacefully celebrate the end of Ramadan, and authorities rescued more civilians from the conflict areas. Our Camila Badisha joins us live with the latest. Camille, what is the situation in Marawi like right now?
The fighting erupts again after the so-called humanitarian pause or the temporary suspension of the military offensive in Marawi City yesterday. The military says the enemy's resistance continues to weaken as the Maute group loses its hold on some members. Maute terrorists continue to destroy and set buildings on fire inside Marawi City a day after the humanitarian pause. That's according to the military as they monitor more arson activities in the 4 barangays still held by the group. Dansalan College, a Catholic school, is one of the first few structures held and burned down by the Maute group. Omar Maute, one of the leaders of the terrorist group believed to have died in the conflict, graduated high school here. Minalang Barapantao, who used to be Omar Maute's teacher, says he is heartbroken after learning that his former student initiated the violence in Marawi.
We were really shocked sa school na ganun yung mangyari at una pa nilang na biktima yung eskwelahan na nagpaaral sa kanila, and yung mga teachers na tinuruan sila ng magandang asal.
Barapantao adds Maute was a regular student, very athletic, and a platoon officer of the school's CAT. He says they never once thought Maute would turn out to be a terrorist.
He's just the silent type, mabait, walang problema. Lahat kami ng mga naging teachers na we were shocked na ganito yung nangyari sa kanya. Pero going back to his high school years, he was a very conscientious student. And in fact, I didn't realize that I was the one who made the yearbook wherein he described himself as religious and conservative.
The military says Maute group's leadership is crumbling as others want to flee, and some are starting to regret their decision to join the conflict, especially the Maranao fighters.
Marami dito ang nalure sa pera. Marami dito ang prinamis ng leadership na pera. And these are the promises. Ngayon, nagsisisi sila.
Authorities say religious leaders are amplifying their call for the terrorists to lay down their weapons.
Those involved Maute brothers are Maranao. And there is a huge clamor among the constituents of Maranao, our traditional leaders, our religious leaders, convincing these people to get out, convincing these people to surrender.
35 days into the fighting, the military says the terrorist group is losing its positions, strategic movement, and morale. But every single day the fight moves closer to the center of action is yet another day of further destruction, not only of physical structures, but also the Maranao culture and heritage. The military killed almost 300 Maute members, while the government troops suffered 70 killed in action. Pia.
Camille, how are the clearing operations of the troops inside Ground Zero? Last information, Maute holding at least 4 barangays. What's happening?
The Maute group is still holding out in 4 barangays, but the government troops have already cleared 86 buildings and recovered 360 firearms, thousands of ammunitions, and hundreds of communication equipment. We are also receiving more reports of more Maute members trying to escape through Lake Lanao. In the past 2 days, there are unverified reports of 3 Maute members captured by the authorities. If you can remember, last week we reported on this. The government troops are reinforcing its water assets to guard Lake Lanao. Pia.
Camila Badisha there reporting from Iligan City. Now, reports received by the military say supposed ISIS leader in the country, Isnilon Hapilon, has left the Maute group in Marawi City. Speaking to the source, Armed Forces Public Affairs Office Chief Edgar Arevalo points out reports from the sources indicate most of them have not seen Hapilon lately.
We have report that shows or says that Isnilon Hapilon, the the touted emir of ISIS in the Philippines has already abandoned his people. So this indicates somehow that their defense or their leadership and their command and control is already collapsing due to the intense pressure that our government forces are now letting them experience.
So when you say that Isnilon Hapilon has abandoned the group, so he's already out of Marawi?
We have those reports that indicate that because we monitor them according to our sources on the ground and from those who we have rescued. And most of them were not quite able to say they saw Isnilon Hapilon lately. So these are some indicators that he has abandoned his people.
Arevalo adds during the humanitarian pause yesterday, Maranao leaders had rare access to remaining Maute strongholds and spoke with its leaders to convince them to free their hostages and surrender.
There were 8 of them actually, to include these are imam, respected religious leader, and to include one alias Bin Laden. He called us Bin Laden. Is being respected by the group. He was able to speak to Abdullah. The information that we got was that this group were trying to convince the leaders of the Maute ISIS group to surrender and set free the civilians they're still holding hostage up to that time. But with regard to how it went out and it finally turned out, we are not quite privy about it yet. Right now, what we still have, Ruth, are estimates. They were saying that it is around 100 to 120 still. And what is quite disturbing and making it more challenging on the part of the Armed Forces of the Philippines was the reported use of these civilians as workers. One thing is somehow a good news, a welcome development or welcome news, if we could say, was that reports coming from those who were able to rescue that Father Chito is still alive.
You can catch a replay of that full interview tonight at 7:30. Vice President Leni Robredo visits evacuees who fled the fight in Marawi City. Although she is seen as the face of the opposition, she says she would rather help out in the administration's efforts to address the crisis instead of criticizing them. JC Cotinga has that story.
The 4 walls of this classroom now make up Omaira Candidato's world. She's been ailing with kidney failure for 2 years and needs dialysis every week. Ever since she and her family fled the war in Marawi City, she's missed 4 dialysis sessions. Now, her abdomen is bloated and she has a hard time breathing.
Talaga siya dito na nahirapan ako kasi na yung itong higa namin matigas, na itong masakit yung likod ko. Tapos, yung palaging kinatay na yung mga dilata. Yung mga pansit. Siyempre po, yung kalusugan na hindi ma-imbalance yung nutrition.
They share this evacuation center in Balui, Lanao del Norte, with around 1,500 other people, also from Marawi City. Many evacuees are cut off from their livelihood, so they are struggling to survive. Those who are ill, like Omaira, can no longer afford treatment and medication.
Na paano na yung mga kalusugan namin? Yung mga bata, hindi makapag-aral. Mabuti. Nawala yung education nila. Tapos na, pwede man sila mag-aral dito, pero natatakot kami na ba magbakwit ulit kami na mayawalan namin yung mga anak namin.
Vice President Leni Robredo visited the evacuees and she noted that their situation has improved from when she first visited, right after the fighting in Marawi began.
Kausap natin yung mga tao, steady supply naman yung pagkain. Nagpapasalamat tayo sa mga volunteers kasi maayos na maayos yung pamamalakad.
Robredo spoke with some of the evacuees, including Omaira. She promised to help with the hospital bills. The opposition figurehead declined to comment on the more controversial aspects of the Marawi crisis, like martial law. Instead, she emphasized the need for unity.
Hindi perpekto, pero kailangan pagtulungan natin lahat. Rather than mag-criticize tayo na mag-criticize, magtulungan na lang tayo kasi maraming pangangailangan talagang kailangan sagutin.
Her office has been giving out relief packages to evacuees. She met with local officials and the military for a briefing on the situation. In Iligan City, JC Gotinga, CNN Philippines.
Here's the world at a glance. At least 153 were killed Sunday in an oil tanker explosion in Pakistan. A police official told CNN the truck veered off the road when the driver lost control. As the tanker sat on the side of the road, fuel began leaking out in large pools. Hundreds of people from nearby villages rushed to collect the fuel in pots before the truck suddenly exploded. Officials say more than 100 were injured. It is still unknown what caused the wreck to ignite. In China, rescue efforts at the scene of landslides that flattened a village have been called off after authorities warned of the risk of more land collapsing. At least 93 people are still missing after the landslide devastated the remote mountain village in Sichuan province Saturday morning. Authorities say 10 bodies have so far been recovered since the beginning of rescue efforts. Experts say landslides were caused by torrential rain and possible geological damage from a 2008 earthquake. And take a look at this video a passenger took on board an Air Asia X flight. Passengers had to endure turbulence for 2 hours during the flight to Kuala Lumpur from Perth, Australia on Sunday. Passengers said it was really shaky and very scary, and added the pilot asked passengers to pray twice. The plane returned to Perth due to what the airline called a technical issue. A more somber atmosphere marks Eid al-Fitr, the end of Ramadan, in the wake of fighting in Marawi city. And Islamic schools speak up on extremism. This is Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Welcome to Facebook Live here on CNN Philippines Newsnight. In the next segment of the show, more stories about the crisis in Marawi. We all know it was the end of Ramadan. Eid al-Fitr was observed. The Maranaos there observing Eid al-Fitr. It's a little bit subdued celebration. It is meant to be a very happy event in the lives of the Muslim people. But in Marawi, as you will see in the report that's coming up, very subdued celebration for Eid al-Fitr, the end of Ramadan. We also have more stories for you about Marawi, what is going on there. It is past, it's been more than a month since the crisis there broke out. This all began, and I'm sure you remember, May 23rd, in the afternoon of May 23rd, when authorities tried to arrest Isnilon Hapilon, the so-called alleged leader of ISIS here, or ISIS inspired groups here in the Philippines. So that has escalated into what we see today. The crisis in Marawi, about 40%, rough estimates, 30 to 40 to 50% of Marawi destroyed by this crisis. But we will have more stories for you in just a bit. In the meantime, we would like to say hello first to some of our viewers. Maria Teresa Valenia, who's watching from Makati City. Ariel Pontigon, who is watching in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. Rochelle Salazar says, and we quote, "Peace na po sana sa Mindanao." We wish the same thing also, of course. Please watch Inside Marawi tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the evening here in CNN Philippines. A very special documentary for you all. Tonight on CNN Philippines, it is traditionally a festive time, but Muslims in Marawi marked the end of the holy month of Ramadan in sorrow because of the ongoing crisis in the city. JC Gotinga has more.
For the first time in more than a month, the few people left in Marawi city wake up to the muezzin's call to prayer, not the sound of bombs and gunfire. At the capital mosque, men, women, and children file in, wearing traditional Islamic garb, their Sunday best. Eid al-Fitr, the feast of the breaking of the fast, and the fear of stray bullets is not stopping them from celebrating it. But the mood during prayers is far from festive. In the faces of the worshippers, sorrow and anguish. They have every reason to be despondent. Even the alim, or high priest, breaks down during his sermon.
Nawa kami sa aming bayan na alam mo na ang nangyari sa aming mahal na bayan na Marawi. Masakit sa aming kalooban ang nangyayari ito. Lalo na ang dahilan sa pangyayari ay kapwa namin Muslim.
The armed forces temporarily halts its offensive, a gesture of respect for this most sacred of Muslim holidays. From his rooftop, Kasan Mama relishes the silence. Only Allah knows when the next quiet morning will be.
Mabuti. Basta walang gumba, mabuti lang. Mabuti basta walang gumba. Kung mayroon gumba, hindi na mabuti.
His relative, Babay Haji Hassan, takes it as a foretaste of what she hopes lies ahead, the peace and quiet of days gone by.
Tulog kami ng mahimbi kasi wala kaming naririnig na bomba. Hanggang ngayon wala pa rin. Di masaya. Parang tapos na ang gira.
Back in the mosque, the Alim admonishes his people to hold on to the true teachings of Islam and not fall into the trap of extremism. He also encourages them to emulate the prophets Moses and Muhammad, who triumphed over tribulation through faith in God. They don't have much of a choice.
So, pinapaubay na lang namin ito sa pong may kapal kay Allah na sana mapalitan itong hinagpis namin ng mas maganda para sa amin.
Gaano kasakit sa inyo itong...
Masakit po. Pero we leave it to Allah.
Inshallah, God willing, it will happen soon. In Marawi City, JC Gotinga, CNN Philippines.
The military boosts its fight against terrorism online, and Islamic schools vow to block extremism. Nicolette Henson-Hizon has the stories from the regions.
Officials of madrasas or Islamic schools in Davao City are confident Islamic extremism would not find its way into their schools. Davao Madrasa Center Administrator Samer Alyong says all 49 madrasas are coordinating with the city government to make sure radicalism is avoided. Alyong says young Muslim students are aware of the true teachings of Islam and not easily swayed by extremism. The city government supports all 49 madrasas and pays their 99 Arabic teachers. Besides fighting in Ground Zero, government forces are also battling terrorists in the internet. When the crisis struck Marawi on May 23rd, the 1st Infantry Division was on a series of training for digital media capability enhancement. The trainees eventually became the core of Task Force Marawi's social media monitoring team, fighting terror propaganda online. CNN Philippines talked with supposed online sympathizers and supporters of the terrorists early on in the crisis. Their social network accounts are no longer accessible after the military requested Facebook to take down over 60 profiles. Over the weekend in the Visayas, the people of Ormoc City celebrated Piña Festival. It's a tribute to the city's patrons, Saints Peter and Paul, but the festival's name is from the primary agricultural produce, the pineapple. Mayor Richard Gomez revived this festival after it was scrapped by previous administrations. Nicolette Henson-Hizon, CNN Philippines.
The Transportation Department vows shorter travel time once the Manila-Clark Railway project is up and running. And the LGBT community joins the colorful and peaceful Pride March in different countries. These and more stories in Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Namiss po namin pero nakakalungkot din kasi nagtapos na yung Ramadan. Andun kasi sa Ramadan yung mga gantimpala, yung mga great rewards na binibigay ng Allah to all believers.
Masaya ang mga Muslim sa ngayon dahilan sa natupad nila yung isang kautusan na napakahalaga. So ito ay nagbubunga ng pagpapatawaran sa isa't isa at saka pag-ibig.
Palakasin nila ang loob nila, kunting tiis. Kasi ang Muslim, sanay kami dyan eh. Kasi may word ng Allah, Inna Allah mas sabirin. I'm with the peasants. So pag nandyan ang Panginoon Allah sa'yo, inshallah walang imposible. Makaraos din tayong lahat.
This is Facebook Live again here on CNN Philippines Newsnight. In the next segment of the show, we're still going to be talking about Marawi. We will speak specifically to the Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process. One of the Assistant Secretaries, his name is Dixon Hermoso. He was involved in the planning for yesterday's humanitarian pause that was declared by the AFP. Well, the AFP, the Armed Forces, declared that humanitarian pause from 6 in the morning till the afternoon. And OPAP, together with some Maranao religious leaders there, was able to speak to some of the Maute group, and that's when they were able to get civilians who had been trapped in Marawi City for quite a while. I think it was 4 or 5 civilians. So we're going to be speaking to Assistant Secretary Hermoso to clarify many things. For example, we're going to try and find out what exactly happened, what has happened to the Catholic priest. Remember, the one who had been reported as having been hostaged by the Maute group. His name, Father Chito Sungano. We're also going to try and find out what had happened to the humanitarian pause yesterday, Sunday. This is Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Welcome back. Tragedy in Colombia after a tourist boat sank in the northwestern part of the country. Efforts to find 31 people still missing were suspended overnight because of thunderstorms. At least 6 people died in Sunday's incident near the town of Guatape, roughly 45 kilometers east of Medellin, one of Colombia's biggest cities. 122 were rescued. A video on social media showed the boat tilting from one side to the other before sinking or going under. One survivor says the vessel did not have life vests on board. U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is calling on Qatar and the Arab countries boycotting it to meet and resolve a diplomatic row. The request comes 2 days after the boycotting countries delivered a list of 13 demands to Doha and told the government it had 10 days to comply. Qatar says the list of demands is unreasonable. Amid the crisis, Qataris are standing behind their emir, seen as Jamana Karadsheh, reports.
At a time of crisis, Qataris are rallying around their ruler. Every afternoon, a show of support in the capital. This portrait of the Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani has become a symbol of Qatari patriotism. Ahmed bin Majid Al Madid is the artist behind the painting. His stencil-style image has gone viral.
Everybody in Qatar, from the citizens and people living in Qatar, from all the nations, they stand as well with the Emir because we are living a good life here.
Sheikh Tamim inherited this Arab powerhouse from his father, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, who in 2013 handed over power to his heir apparent, a rare move in a region where rulers hold on to power until their death. Sheikh Hamad was credited with transforming Qatar from one of the poorest countries in the Arabian Gulf to one of the world's richest, with investments across the globe. Its rapid transformation, not just economic, also diplomatic as a mediator in various conflicts, making it a major regional actor. An actor who earlier this month was ostracized by neighboring countries. Qatar expert Professor Mehran Kamarava believes there was no one trigger for this diplomatic crisis, but that it is driven by Saudi Arabia and the UAE wanting to contain their neighbor.
Within the GCC, Saudi Arabia has been the dominant actor. It is not only the biggest and the oldest and the economically and militarily most powerful, but it views itself as the rightful diplomatic spokesman of the Arabian Peninsula and in the region. And you have smaller countries that do not necessarily buy into this big brother formula.
In 2011, a new Qatar emerged during the Arab Spring, one that placed itself at the forefront of regional change, backing rebel groups in places like Syria and Libya. Arab nations also involved in these proxy wars, now accusing Qatar of funding and supporting Islamist movements and destabilizing the region. Allegations Qatar says are baseless. With a survivalist foreign policy, Kamarava says Qatar has tried to keep more friends than enemies, maintaining good ties with countries like Saudi Arabia's main rival, Iran.
So long as that sense of patriotism lasts, then no doubt the Qatari government can withstand the pressure that is being put on it by the UAE and Saudi Arabia. But if there are indications of discomfort and unease among the Qatari population, then I think we will begin to see some movement on the part of the Qatari government. making some concessions.
Faced with uncertainty, Qataris stand united and defiant.
Again, that was CNN's Jumana Karajshe reporting. Members of the LGBT community across the world gathered for the Pride March on Sunday. In Serbia, hundreds paraded on the streets of Belgrade wearing colorful costumes and waving rainbow-colored flags, the symbol of the LGBT community. A calm and cheerful parade too in Chicago in the U.S., thousands gathering at Uptown and Lakeview neighborhoods. Floats and decorated vehicles also fill the streets. It's a different scenario, though, in Turkey. Government canceled the parade in the capital, Istanbul, but it did not stop some supporters from participating in impromptu marches in Taksim Square. Police patrolled the square and prevented the march from occurring. At least 3 participants were arrested. 7 people who opposed the march were also taken into custody. Meanwhile, in Canada, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau joined celebrations in Toronto. Mr. Trudeau could be seen in the crowd marching in Pride Toronto Parade. The event is one of Canada's largest festivals celebrating the LGBT community. Last year, Mr. Trudeau made history when he became the first sitting Prime Minister to take part in a Pride event. A military historian warns of the possible consequences of a prolonged martial law in Mindanao. The health department says more millennials test positive for human immunodeficiency virus. We'll give you those stories here on Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
Nescafe? Or should I say new Nescafe Gold? The difference.
This is Facebook Live again here on CNN Philippines Newsnight. The next segment of the show, we have this story for you. HIV cases rising among young people today. It's gone up to quite an alarming rate. Also, more stories for you on Marawi. We're going to be speaking to Assistant Secretary Dixon Hermoso of the Office of the Presidential Advisor in the Peace Process about yesterday's humanitarian pause in military operations against the Maute group, the ISIS-inspired group in Marawi City. That meant that from 6 a.m. to late afternoon, as much as possible, guns were silent, except for a few exchanges of gunfire. But basically, it was a very quiet Sunday. After all, it was the end of Ramadan, Eid al-Fitr in Marawi City. We'd like to say hello, meantime, to some of our viewers who are watching right now. Dennis Samson, who is in Taguig City. Bobby Diamante, who's watching from Israel. Friends Dima Files, watching from Saudi Arabia. Please tell us, aside from where you're watching from, what you think of our stories tonight. Of course, as in any other day since May 23rd, most of the time our top stories about Marawi, the crisis in Marawi. So speaking of Marawi, we have this very special documentary for you. It's called Inside Marawi. It's premiering tomorrow night at 8 o'clock here on CNN Philippines. Please don't forget Inside Marawi here on CNN Philippines tomorrow, 8 p.m. This is Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. I'm Pio Ontiveros. Our top stories: the military is confident of winning the battle to liberate Marawi, and while more civilians are rescued from the war zone, the casualty count grows. Joint Task Force Marawi says even Maranao people want the terrorists to surrender or get out of their land. HIV cases are rising in the country and younger people are getting infected. Government promises to stay on track on its Build program with a railway soon from Manila to Pampanga. Transportation Department says commuters taking the railway will travel from Tutuban to Clark in only 55 minutes from the usual 2 to 3 hours. And the boy who lived stays strong for 20 years. Potterheads celebrate 2 decades of magic. Facebook also joined the fun in marking the milestone. Humanitarian groups say A humanitarian crisis is now present in Marawi City because of the residents displaced by the government's fight against the Maute terrorists. A military historian, however, believes the declaration of martial law in Mindanao should not be prolonged. Cecil Larizabal tells us why.
No end in sight for the Marawi conflict if even a ceasefire to take innocent civilians out of harm's way fails, as terrorists fired at a combined rescue effort of government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. Now the military is bent on finishing the war until the last Maute member is killed. Military historian Jose Antonio Custodio believes it will take time to end an urban warfare. And given a violation of the short 10-hour truce or so-called humanitarian pause, Custodio says a ceasefire with terrorists is no guarantee to end the firefight.
But these are not just Mautes, there are also other affiliate gunmen also. And such might not filter down to the entire opposite side. So you will have somebody there violating it.
In the war to liberate Marawi, the civilians are suffering the most. A professor who is involved in a humanitarian mission even described the situation as a humanitarian crisis, with many residents staying in cramped evacuation centers.
There were 400 families gathered in one building, right? Tapos isa lang yung faucet. So there is indeed a humanitarian crisis.
And the crisis drags on. Custodio believes the government cannot prolong military rule in Mindanao.
We do not want to get the military thinking that the civilian government is totally irrelevant. But if you extend it on and on and on and on and on, you risk tiring also the military. And the military does not like to get tired.
Peace advocate Isagani Abunda adds, martial law is not a quick fix to the Marawi situation. He says there's more solving the long-standing conflict in Mindanao.
What happened in Marawi was actually a result of consecutive failures of previous governments to really address the root causes of Mindanao insurgency.
Cecil Larizabal, CNN Philippines.
The imams or Muslim religious leaders are reportedly negotiating with the Maute group. Let's go above and beyond the headlines with the Office of the Presidential Advisor in the Peace Process, Assistant Secretary Dixon Hermoso. Good evening, Mr. Assistant Secretary. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yes, good evening, Tia, and to the person listen.
Asik Hermoso? Sir?
Yes, good.
Okay, medyo parang in and out yung signal po ninyo. But can you hear me now?
Yes,
all right. Okay. Well, sir, can we begin with this? Can you confirm that yesterday during the humanitarian pause, ang dapat po na nai-release ay si Father Chito Suganub? Is that correct, sir?
That's just one part of the plan. But the overall is to bring out as much as we can from those that are trapped inside the ground zero.
Okay, so isa si Father Chito doon. Did you have an idea about how many, ilan po dapat ang nailabas nyo na trapped civilians?
Well, supposedly, we don't have the figures, but...
you wanted to get everybody, I guess.
Yes, our team that are awaiting the signals of our emissaries are just on standby in the bridge of Bangulo, so that they can get inside and then get as much as they can from the civilians. But unfortunately, there are sporadic sniper fires. Even our emissaries were not spared from that. And those is intermittent fires, not coming from the government forces, but it comes from the terrorists.
From the Maute. Okay, so Father Chito was just one of the many that you wanted to rescue. There are like, ang dami pong reports mga 200 to 300 civilians daw na trap pa rin sa loob ng Marawi. Hindi po ba, sir?
Yes, but there is no exact figures. More or less in that that number you mentioned, 200 or 300. But we cannot ascertain how many is the number really who are still trapped.
Yes. Sir, apart from the fact that you said there was sporadic gunfire throughout the morning, which is why po na-delay yung pagpasok ng mga rescue teams, ano pa po ba ang naging dahilan kung bakit hindi natuloy yung release ni Father Chito at ng iba pa po?
Yung pong kasing negotiation, very precarious because you're sending emissaries. Yung brand ng Islam nila is different from the brand of Islam of these terrorists. So nagkaroon po ng deadlock in the talks at we are just awaiting. When I received the call from our emissaries na they're getting out with some hostages.
Okay.
And I thought that they will give a signal for the whole volunteers to get inside. That comes from the rank of the ML para po makuha namin yung nasa immediate vicinity ng Bangulo District.
Sir, ginamit po ninyo yung salitang deadlock, no, in negotiations, that term. That means na merong hinihingi ang government side, ang mga rescue teams, meaning the release of those who are hostage or those who are trapped. At meron din pong hinihingi ang Maute group. So we would like to know, ano po ba yung mga demands ng Maute group kaya't hindi po na-release ang sina Father Chito and everyone else?
Yeah, how much I wish to say this in public, but we are still negotiating for that.
Okay.
Hopefully, in the next few days, we can have a development on this. But we are trying our best na ma-soften yung position ng terrorist
Okay,
na
sir.
kinakausap natin.
All right, sir. So you cannot tell us what those demands are, but you are confirming that there were demands made by the Maute group in exchange for the release of hostages and trapped civilians.
That was the one issue that was brought to my attention by our emissaries. But the focus is to get as much as we can, regardless kung ito ba sila Father Chito or the rest of those that are still in the hands of the Maute.
Okay. Well, was there anything else na bring up po sa negotiations? Bukod pa sa release ng mga hostages at ng mga trapped civilians, meron po bang pinag-usapan na end to hostilities? Meron po bang terms of surrender na pinag-usapan? Was there something to that effect na inoffer sa Maute?
The emissary is composed of 8 religious people, hostages. Ang kanila pong position when they get inside is to ask and request the Maute to release hostages. And the second, if they are willing to be the bridge para po kung gusto nilang sumuko or what else, yun po ang kanilang
function.
Guiding principle when they get inside.
Okay.
But nagkaroon po sila ng argumentong mainitan dahil hindi nga sila nagkaintindihan because iba nga yung brand ng Islam nung kabila at iba naman yung mga hostages natin.
So pinag-usapan po ang end of hostilities or the possibility that they could surrender.
That was the platform na dinala ng ating mga emissaries na mga hostages na ihinto na yung kaguluhan para maibalik na sa normal na pamumuhay yung ground zero.
Okay, and in effect, medyo deadlock like you said. Pero ang sabi po ninyo, sir, kanina, deadlock pero pwede pang pag-usapan. So there is a schedule na posibleng pumasok na naman po itong mga emissaries at kausapin ulit itong mga Maute. Ganun po ba?
Yes, we are hoping for that na magbubukas ulit ng isang operational post yung ating kasundaluhan at yung kabila para po maibalik natin yung negotiation sa dalawang grupo. However, ang ating kasundaluhan ay open naman except for the other side na mayroong konting hardline position sila na hindi ayon at saka hindi natin mai-move yung pag-i-extract o pagre-retrieve ng mga nasa loob pang civilian.
Sir, nung pinag-usapan po nung sinabi ang surrender or in whatever terminology na ginamit, paano po ba nag-react ang Maute? Nagalit po sila? Or how did they react?
Meron mga adverse reaction na hindi ko ma-share muna in the meanwhile.
Alright.
Dahil continuing po yung ating negotiation na sana lumambot at nang sa gayon ay makuha natin yung mga natrap na civilian.
Okay, and my last question, sir, dahil we understand you cannot identify the negotiators, yung mga emisaryo po, pero we understand also that, and we are sure that they were speaking to the Maute leadership, hindi po yung mga underlings no, ang kinausap. So which Maute brother were they talking to? Was it Abdullah or Omar? Because
they were
there are
able to
reports that
connect
Omar...
themselves with Abdullah, the other brothers, since the time that we were going inside that ground zero, si Abdullah yung kausap ng ating emissaries.
All right. And Abdullah himself was the one speaking and giving that adverse reaction nung pinag-usapan yung surrender. Did he also talk about Omar? Did he talk about their situation?
Well, there's no feedback on the other brothers, but we just focus on one that is having already aligned with our emissaries.
All right. Is there anything else you can share with us, sir, Asik Hermoso?
Well, we will try our very best under the peace corridor of the President that our volunteers and us from OPAP will, as much as possible, extract so many civilians still trapped inside the ground zero.
Well, we wish you luck, sir. Asik Dixon Hermoso, thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Asik Hermoso there, confirming that the emissaries yesterday during the humanitarian pause in military operations in Marawi City did speak to Abdullah Maute. He was the one who faced them, and they talked about a possible release of hostages and trapped civilians among, as Asik Hermoso confirmed, among those dapat na nai-release na hostage si Father Chito Suganub na ang Catholic priest na noong May 23 pa ay kinuha ng mga Maute. Sinabi rin po ni Asik Hermoso na meron pong nangyaring deadlock doon sa negotiations dahil nga magkaiba daw itong mga imam na pumasok at yung pag-iisip naman ng mga Maute group. Pero sinasabi po niya na pinag-usapan din daw po ang possible surrender ng Maute terrorists at nagkaroon po, and we will quote him, he said there was an adverse reaction to this point of discussion. But there, Asik Hermoso confirming all that. In the meantime, destruction, chaos and fear, the scourge of terrorism makes its mark on innocent lives and threatens human dignity. This is Marawi, an image of destruction and hopelessness, ground zero of the government's fight to end rebellion. But out of the ruins, stories of heroism, of sacrifices are emerging, people determined to rise and rebuild. Our correspondents, George Cahiles, David Santos, and Ruth Cabal bring you to the heart of the story. This is CNN Philippines Presents Inside Marawi.
Dito tayo sa harapan ng Amay Pakpak Medical Center at kasalukuyan na itong mga miyembro ng Philippine Army ay kiniklear tong area dahil kanina daw may sighting ng mga miyembro ng Maute Group dito.
Kasabay ng pag-alingaw-ngaw ng tunog ng bakbakan. Dahil nga yung mga iba ay kanina pa lang or kahapon pa lang nakaalis ng Marawi City, may nakausap tayo dito. Sabi niya mahigit 10 oras daw siya naglakad kasi wala na daw siyang masakyan.
Tuloy-tuloy ang laban sa ngalan ng kapayapaan. Dahil pinili nga ng ilang mga residente ng Marawi na manatili sa kanilang mga bahay, nahaharap naman sila sa sari-saring mga hamon, lalo pat wala pa ring linaw kung kailan maibabalik sa normal ang sitwasyon sa lungsod.
Sa gitna ng kawalan, takot at pangungulila,
ay, sobrang hirap, takot, wala na talagang makaglagyan ng takot.
Sumisibol ang iba't ibang kwento ng kabayanihan at pag-asa.
Pag hindi nila pa nakita ang anak nila, hindi sila mawala ng pag-asa. Magdasal lang silang magdasal sa Panginoon. Baka may milagro din, tulad na nangyari sa amin.
Ito ang CNN Philippines Presents Inside Marawi.
Catch Inside Marawi tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the evening. Let's check how major roads in Metro Manila are looking. First, Taft Avenue and Pedro Hill Street. On the right side of your screens, you have the southbound lane. Traffic is light towards Hill Puyat Avenue. On the left side, we're seeing occasional slowdowns approaching the intersection, so expect minor delays if you're northbound to United Nations Avenue. Let's move under the Skyway. This is Villamore northbound at grade. If you're coming from the south of Metro Manila, And heading back toward Pasay, Manila and EDSA, traffic still green and go until the exits. Data from the Health Department show more people tested positive for the human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, and a lawmaker says there's something alarming about this. Our Joyce Ilas tells us more in this report.
The Department of Health reports that in April this year alone, 629 persons were diagnosed HIV positive. What's more alarming, most of them are millennials. 190 cases involve 15 to 24 years old, while 323 cases are 25 to 34 years old. A big portion of those who tested positive are men who acquired the disease through sex. This month alone, 17 people died of HIV. In a statement, Aangat Tayo Party List Representative Neil Abayon says this data is alarming. He says HIV and AIDS prevention campaigns should be intensified, not just in schools, but also in workplaces and even at the barangay level. Problem is, data from the Department of Health only involves those who get tested. The numbers may even go higher. HIV prevention advocacy group The Red Whistle says many are still having difficulty getting themselves tested. Under the law, those 18 years old and below need parental consent before they get tested for HIV.
So can you imagine if you're 18 below and you ask your parents, hey, can I get this signed? Diba parang ang hirap ata no na parang, are you having sex? You're having sex?
The Red Whistle co-founder Nico Locosme believes sex education among the youth is important to know the risks of acquiring the disease. HIV prevention advocate Anthony Falcon believes it is important for parents to talk to their children about sex and sexually transmitted diseases.
Kaya pababa rin ng pababae yung age ng apektado kasi nga it's taboo to talk about sex even, and to go to a next level about HIV it's even more hard.
Falcon and Cosme are calling on the public to do away with the common perception of HIV.
Ang dami din siyang nakaattach na stigma na malandi ka or promiscuous ka or alam mo yun, or you deserve it. Yung mga ganun na parang it shouldn't, if you are aware of how you transmit and how you acquire it, I don't think you're gonna have that kind of mindset.
They encourage the public to learn more about sexually transmitted diseases to help stop the spread of HIV and AIDS. Joyce Ilas, CNN Philippines.
Economic managers unveil the Manila-Clark Railway project that will cut travel time by more than half. And oil companies reduce pump prices for the fourth straight week. We'll give you details here on Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This is the Petron difference. Petron with Triumph.
Manila-Clark Railway, that is part of the government's Build program. They are saying, the administration, the Duterte administration, saying that construction is expected to begin the last quarter of this year. That is going to be shortening travel time, and it's going to be servicing about how many, 100, 200,000 people who can travel between Manila and Clark. And then there'll be several stations all along the way. We'll have that story for you in just a bit. Also, announcements of oil price cuts. By how much, we're going to know a little bit later. We'll give you all those details. In the meantime, we'd also like to say hello to Lisa Filiarca, who's watching from Iloilo City, Ramil Cantal, who's watching from Saudi Arabia. Let's take a look at President Duterte's first year in office through the eyes of his own officials. Please watch CNN Philippines Town Hall, Facebook Live first on June 28 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But our live telecast is on June 30, Friday at 8 o'clock in the evening. Please join us for Town Hall and tell us what you think of the President's first year in office. You can comment in the comment section down below, right there, or you can tweet us and tag CNN Philippines. You're watching Newsnight. The government launched a railway project today that will connect Tutuban in Manila and Clark in Pampanga. That aims to cut travel time from the capital to Central Luzon by more than half. Rex Remito reports.
Marcelo Chan goes home frequently to Angeles City in Pampanga. He spends as much as 3 hours on the road because of heavy traffic.
Medyo naabala rin, siyempre, kung minsan kailangan mo makarating kagad sa pupuntahan mo.
With the government's Manila-Clark Railway project, Chan can reach his hometown in just 55 minutes.
Gusto ko lang ma-experience yung mapaiksi ang biyahe.
The Manila-Clark Railway is one of major infrastructure projects continued by the Duterte administration. The system, which will use the old Philippine National Railways line, begins in Tutuban and Solis in Manila, goes through the cities of Caloocan and Valenzuela, and the towns of Meycauayan, Marilao, Bocaue, Balagtas, Giginto, Malolos, and Kalumpit in Bulacan. It will end in Pampanga, going through Apalit, San Fernando, Angeles, Clark International Airport, and the proposed new Clark City. The railway will serve around 350,000 commuters per day in its first year of operation. The entire line will have 13 trains with 8 coaches per set. Trains will run at 120 kilometers per hour, more than the 100 kilometer per hour speed limit on the North Luzon Expressway. Economic managers were in full force during the marking of some stations.
Pag sinabi namin, minarkahan namin ito yung istasyon, ang ibig kong sabihin yan, wala nang urungan.
The construction of Manila-Clark Railway project will begin within the last 3 months of the year. Barring delays, the railway system could begin operating by 2020.
Hindi ho namin tatapusin yung procurement at bidding para magsimula.
Government may partially operate the system as soon as construction per section is complete. Some regular commuters to Pampanga, like Rovi Añate, welcomes the railway project, and she's hoping the trip will be affordable.
Sana mas cheaper yung pamasahe doon.
Rex Remitio, CNN, Philippines.
This program is brought to you by Union for Life, the bank assurance partnership of Insular Life and Union Bank of the Philippines.
Heads up to motorists. Oil companies are lowering pump prices for the 4th straight week. This morning, Phoenix Petroleum lowered gasoline prices by 40 centavos per liter and diesel by 25 centavos per liter. Tomorrow, Shell, Flying V, Eastern Petroleum, Sea Oil, Petron, and PTT Philippines will cut 35 centavos for every liter of gasoline and 20 centavos for every liter of diesel. Meanwhile, kerosene prices for Shell, Flying V, Sea Oil, and Petron will be cheaper by 20 centavos per liter. Global business now. Japanese airbag maker Takata is filing for bankruptcy protection. Takata is seeking bankruptcy protection both in the U.S. and in Japan. Most of its operations have been bought by Key Safety Systems, a Chinese-owned company based in Michigan. Takata has been struggling since its defective airbags led to the recall of tens of millions of vehicles. The airbags can explode and send shrapnel to drivers and passengers. They're blamed for at least 11 deaths in the U.S. and several more in other countries.
This program is brought to you by Union for Life, the bank assurance partnership of Insular Life and Union Bank of the Philippines.
You're watching Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. We'll tell you why today is a magical day for the fans of the Harry Potter series. Keep it here on CNN Philippines.
I cannot create heaven, but I intend to stop drugs.
New celebrations around the world are making waves online. Let's find out what netizens have to say about them from our Nicolette Henson-Hizon.
People online join our Muslim brothers and sisters in celebrating Eid al-Fitr, or the end of the holy month of Ramadan. This Twitter user wishes all Muslims joy and happiness on the occasion. One netizen wonders, though, why we can't end the war in Marawi after a month of martial law. He says Eid al-Fitr should be peaceful now. Despite that, one tweet reads, in part, quote, Eid Mubarak Muslim friends, we are one with you. Today's also a magical day for Harry Potter fans. The story of the boy who lived turns 20. 2 decades ago today, author J.K. Rowling finally published Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, known in the U.S. and in some parts of the world as Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. That's after receiving multiple rejections from publishers. One netizen thanks Rowling for, quote, creating a story that means so much to so many people everywhere. Another one says he became a decent writer by reading the Harry Potter series as a kid. Facebook also joined the fun in marking the milestone. Whenever you mention the word Harry Potter and the 4 Hogwarts houses, a special animation will appear on the scene. How magical? Well, for more on these stories, you can visit our website at cnnphilippines.com and follow us on social media at CNN Philippines. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Nicolette Henson-Hizon.
And before we go, this year's graduates from different colleges and universities in the country celebrate their special day in their own unique way. In this report, our Ruth Cabal tells us some of them made a mark.
In I-Academy, Makati, multimedia arts and design students have this annual gimmick to customize their toga caps with creative artworks. From dragons, to Pokemon, to unicorns, flowers, barkada initials, witty taglines, or even inspirational quotes. These kids are sure to have a colorful future ahead. Meanwhile, in the University of the Philippines, sports science graduate Noelyn Jane Figueroa just did a fitting farewell for her graduation rites. Instead of the traditional paluan by UP Pep Squad drummers, she chose to do a bird front toss, a famous cheering stunt to cap off her cheerleading and college life. Noelyn was part of the UP Pep Squad team that won back-to-back UAAP cheerleading titles from 2011. Pinoy Big Brother Teen Edition winner Myrtle Sarosa also inspired her fans. She graduated not only with a broadcast communication degree, but also with a cum laude honor after studying for 6 years.
Always work hard to achieve your dreams. Kasi if you guys work hard and do your best, mararating nyo kahit ano man yan.
She is joined by Venus Ra, who graduates with a master's degree in community development.
It's how you relate with other people, how you treat people, even if people who are not in a community where you want to serve, but the people that you interact with every day.
2 of UP's summa cum laudes this year were making waves on social media last week after being tagged as a couple, but they clarified they're just friends.
I guess some people misinterpret it kasi like kami magkasama.
Dapat po nagtutulungan para po sa pag-achieve ng ating goals, para rin po matulungan yung bayan.
But fake news or not, it's national unity that matters, says molecular biology graduate and batch 27 valedictorian Arman Ali Godsinya.
Underneath all our external differences, we're all just made up of the same molecules that aggregated to form a human body.
Ruth Cabal, CNN Philippines.
And that's it for tonight. Thank you for your time. I'm Pio Ontiveros. See you again tomorrow for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.